Charlese has established herself as one of the most talented costume designers in the business. She has a unique talent for creating characters that are imaginative yet grounded in reality. With Charlese's personal fashion influences ranging from 1969 to the afro-futurism of the 70s, Gianni Versace's 90s, as well as her passion for travel and exploring new worlds, Charlese creates groundbreaking and vibrant period and contemporary costumes. Charlese has costume designed 10 remarkable feature films over the last 10 years, starting with Newlyweeds, which went on to win an Independent Spirit Award and premiered as part of the 2013 Sundance Next. She then went on to design George Tillman's Inevitable Defeat of Mr. and Pete, starring Anthony Mackie and Jennifer Hudson. Most recently, she has costume designed Judas and the Black Messiah, starring Daniel Kaluuya, Lakeith Stanfield, and Martin Sheen. For those of you who don't know, Judas and the Black Messiah is a biopic about the life and death of Fred Hampton, who was the chairperson for the Black Panther Party of Illinois in the 1960s. Charlese also has been one of the newest elected members of the Academy Award for Motion Pictures, Arts, and Sciences. So I welcome Charlese Antoinette.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about my journey. And I wanted to start with just kind of an overview of my work and show you guys my brand summary and portfolio that I send out to like prospective clients. I think it's important for me to show you this internal document because I know when I was first starting out, I had a hard time understanding how to position myself and put everything that I've ever done together in a way where people would understand who I am as an artist and what I do. And so now I have this awesome deck and I just want to share it with you guys. And there's a lot of words on it and I'm not going to read all the words, but I will just share with you my journey as it is stated in this deck, just so you can understand all the different things that I do. So I'm going to share my screen. One second. Here we go. Okay, so I like to say that as a costume designer, I think 5 steps ahead of everyone. And the reason why I say that is because as a costume designer, we are tasked often with solving problems, one, as well as designing characters and bringing them to life off of a page. We also often have to deal with things like weather, lighting, stunts, blood, all kinds of different things. So it's my job to think 5 steps ahead of everyone when I'm designing these characters and doing my job. So that's why I say that. My bio, Nathaniel already read. You guys understand who I am, but I will say the one part that I don't think was read was I founded a community called Black Designer Database, and we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary. And what we do in Black Designer Database is we provide opportunities for Black designers, media opportunities, so TV, film, placements, as well as we are starting to do some programming and educational initiatives. This past weekend, we celebrated our 1st year anniversary at Soho House, and we had a pop-up of 6 designers who would not normally be able to access that space because they're non-members. Soho House is a membership-only club. And so they were able to access the membership there, network, sell their pieces to the membership. Some amazing people that came and spoke to me during that day were from companies like Estee Lauder and YouTube. So like really great networking opportunity there. And on Saturday, we had a panel discussion. Well, actually, it's more of a conversation that I facilitated between April Walker, who is a veteran streetwear pioneer. If you haven't heard of her, you don't know of her, please look her up. And Joshua Joseph of Rebel Sedans, who is more the new class of streetwear, newer men's wear, New York-based designer. And it was a beautiful conversation. And the conversation and everything that we experienced that weekend really fostered a sense of community. And I'm gonna definitely talk about community a lot as it pertains to my journey. More of my bio, you got it. So these are some of my press features. During the process of doing press for Judas and the Black Messiah, I learned a lot. And I also did not say no to any press because I felt like, you know, at this point in my journey, I had been working for a long time and I had been silently kind of working and keeping my nose to the ground and just doing my thing. And I was like, if this is my one big opportunity, I'm going to maximize it. And I'm grateful that I did, and I showed up for myself in this moment because I ended up with some amazing articles in these publications, and it was my first time getting this much press. But this was after, you know, 10 years of me working as a costume designer and as an artist, and really scrappy at moments, and you know, even going through a bout of homelessness, which we'll touch on later as well. I also did a partnership with Rodarte, the fashion luxury brand, and Dora Maar, which is a luxury reseller, which is owned by a Black woman. And what we did was we partnered so that proceeds from my closet sales would go to a program I started in Cleveland called Design You. And I'll also touch on that as well, because again, community is so important, you know, and giving back to your community is like one of my major focuses as well through everything that I do. Here's some features if you would like to, you know, read up about me. There's articles in Interview magazine about Judas and the Black Messiah. Essence magazine interviewed me and another amazing Black female filmmaker about what we do and behind the scenes. Ebony wrote a beautiful article about what Rodarte, Dora Maar, and I are doing with our charity initiatives for Design You. And In Style wrote an amazing article about Black Designer Database last year when we launched. Just because this is important these days, social media impressions, you know, so if you're putting together something like this, it's important that you put your impressions down. There's ways that you can calculate it. You know, these things are Googleable, but I can also, if anybody's interested, I can also send Nathaniel an app. I just can't remember the name of it right now that can calculate these things for you. I was also nominated for a Costume Designers Guild Award last year for Judas and the Black Messiah. And as I mentioned, I am now one of the newest members of the Academy of Motion Pictures and Sciences. This is also a slide about how I'm a resource creator, you know, how I created Black Designer Database. During the beginning of the pandemic, when there was a mass shortage in New York, the database, you know, banded together and we sewed hundreds of masks and, you know, handmade cloth masks and distributed them throughout New York in partnership with the city of New York and Liberated People, another t-shirt line. And to date, I've donated 40 sewing machines and design materials to the Cleveland Boys and Girls Club. And that initiative was started while I was shooting Judas and the Black Messiah. So this is a quote from one of the articles, and you know, I can read it or you guys can read it, but basically it's all about having a specific and clear vision and how to communicate it. So a lot of people compliment Judas and the Black Messiah and they say, you know, everyone in the movie looks amazing head to toe. And that's because it was very intentional. I was very specific. And I was also very adamant on everyone stepping out, looking period correct head to toe and not skimping on the details because you just don't know where the camera's gonna go. And I'm so glad I did that and drove people crazy at times because it paid off. So these are some trailers from a couple projects that I have costume designed. Judas and the Black Messiah, that picture was taken in LA on the Sunset Strip, which was major. I have always driven down the Sunset Strip. You know, I lived in LA for 6 years, and I was actually homeless in LA for about a year. And so to have my work huge, larger than life on the Sunset Strip was like major, 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 major. And same thing with Times Square. See, yesterday, that billboard was the first time I had my work represented in Times Square. And when I first moved to New York, I actually sold comedy tickets in Times Square. So I've had like these really awesome, like full circle moments like that. And I'm super, super grateful for. I mean, should I show a trailer, Nathaniel, or like?
Sure.
Okay, let me see. I don't know how this is gonna work, y'all, so let's see. I'm not like the most tech savvy person, to be honest.
I believe the sound is not on.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
The sound is not coming through.
Oh, hold on. Let me see. I think I have to stop share and enable sound or something. Yeah, I'm gonna skip that because, like I said, I'm not the most technologically inclined.
Okay.
So
You can get right into the interview. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. I think I have like a few more slides to go over before we get into the interview. Let's see. Yeah, because I just want to show some of my previous work as well, and a few like editorials and campaigns that I've done really quickly. We got like a few more slides to go. So these are some BTS photos from Judas and the Black Messiah, me and Daniel Kaluuya, me and Lakeith, and Dominique Fishback. This photo on the bottom right is me on our wardrobe truck. So that's what the wardrobe truck looks like. That's all the clothes all around me. Everything is like labeled with tags and dividers and sections, so it's easy to find by character. So just so you can get like a little bit of a BTS photo there. Here are some of my other previous films that I've done. Newlyweeds was my first film, and that movie is definitely a huge, it's a huge part of like my journey because it was made by my community of artists and friends, and it's very special and near and dear to my heart. And so, you know, as you're going through life in your career, it's really important that you find community, because community has gotten me through my entire career. You know, all my referrals have been through my community. People looking out for me, people believing in me, people loving my work, supporting me, and just sending my name around. So most of my jobs I've gotten like that. There's been a few jobs I've gotten like through my agents, but the majority of my work I've gotten through my community, and I've worked on these projects with my community. Little Boxes was a movie that I got through my community. It was through a referral. The director of Newlyweeds actually referred me to the director of Little Boxes, as well as Mr. and Pete was also a referral. I can't remember through who, but someone referred me to George Tillman Jr. And so those were like some of my earlier films. The top two films, Davidson and Roxy and Sticky Notes, those actually came through my agents, but it came through those directors seeing my work and tracking me down. So, you know, your work will stand for itself. You know, if you just stay true to who you are, your point of view, your aesthetic, people will notice you. It takes time, but people will notice you, and the people who get it, get it. And that's all you need, is those people who get it. You don't need everybody to get it. I've also styled several commercials, Target, Jason Wu. I did a Pepsi commercial last year, an Indeed commercial, and a VRBO commercial last year, as well as One of Sprite. That's probably my most popular one. It was from 2017. It ended up being a Super Bowl commercial, and that was super exciting because I didn't know it was going to play at the Super Bowl. And I was at my friend's house, just chilling, enjoying myself. And I was like, oh my God, like my commercials on it, you know? And that was the commercial with like little Yachty, and he's in like the ice cave with the green bubble coat. So I'll show you like some of the stills from it. So these are some of the stills from the commercials in various campaigns. I did a really awesome LA Pride campaign one year, and I got to dress several trans activists, and that was really, really special, near and dear to my heart, because I never been able to do something like that before. And it just, you know, any opportunity to dress different body types or different people just makes you even better at your job. And I also really believed in like their movements, and like was fans of several of their writings and work beforehand. So that was really, really awesome. And last year, I also dressed Lil Rel Howery for the Oscars. He was one of the hosts of the Oscars, and he got Best Dressed. So, you know, I've done a variety of work outside of costume design. And, you know, I also have a lifestyle brand, which, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about as well. But yeah, just wanted to give you guys like a quick summary of like who I am and what I do before we like get into the conversation.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Round of applause. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Where are you from? What was your upbringing like? And how does that factor into your work?
Yeah, I'm from suburban Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C. So DMV, if people are familiar with the DMV. I grew up in a really strict upbringing, super Christian. But the cool thing about growing up in as a Black person in a super Christian, strict environment is you have like the Black church and Black church fashion as like one of your early exposures and inspirations. My family also didn't have a ton of money. Like my parents sacrificed a lot so we could go to like these better public schools. So we moved to Montgomery County, Maryland when I was really young. And the thinking my parents had was, we're gonna move away from like our community, but we're gonna do that so our children can have a better life and have a better education, a better free education. So I grew up in a predominantly white area, and over time, it started getting more diverse, but growing up, it was really, really hard. So I felt very isolated a lot as a kid because of these reasons. Like my family was strict, like, you know, it was kind of like I didn't fit in, you know what I mean, in various environments. So I definitely, you know, would spend a lot of time alone and using my imagination. And I think that all that kind of like contributes to me being creative now, like that alone time, that imagining things, imagining different worlds, imagining a different life, or things like that. I also used to draw clothes for my Barbies as a kid because we didn't have a lot of money. My mom would take me to like fabric stores and like Joann's to buy patterns, because we couldn't afford like name brand stuff. So I would pick out these patterns and pick out fabrics and like be able to make my own clothes with my mom. One of my earliest, my mom told me about an early memory she had of me, like when I was like 2 years old. She would like give me a plastic needle and thread and buttons and let me sit and sew with her, because she was sewing wedding dresses and stuff for money. And I would just sit on the floor and like sew with her and hang out with her. I can go on, like my family's like super into fashion. Like my grandmother was like the best dressed woman on a budget. She taught me how to dress well on a budget. My dad taught me about menswear because he was a preacher. So I would go to like the menswear stores with him. So I know all these menswear rules because of my father and, you know, him really being into clothes. So, you know, my upbringing really informed a lot of what I do and know about fashion. And then like I went and got formally educated later, but we can talk about that.
That's like a superhero origin story right there. Like designing their own Barbies toys at like 2. Charlese. Okay, well, when did you know that you wanted to be a costume designer? And as a young Black woman, what were the initial obstacles that you faced in becoming one?
I think I realized I wanted to do costume design when I got to New York and I started seeing things being shot around town. Previous to that, I knew I wanted to work in fashion. I went to school for fashion merchandising and marketing. I wanted to go to school for design, but like everybody talked me out of it because they told me I was going to be a starving artist and all this stuff. And now, like years later, I'm like, I make more money than a lot of my family members, and they don't know. They think I'm a starving artist, and I just let them think I'm broke because then they won't ask me for money. So, there is this like stigma, I think, amongst people of color and Black people about what kinds of jobs you should or you should be doing, and what kinds of jobs make you money versus, jobs that don't. And it's not all the way accurate. As a designer and an artist, you can make good money. It's about like positioning and working hard. And the beginning of your career is rough, but like once you get over the hump, you can make really good money. So, but I was scared. I didn't know anybody who did what I did. So I went to school for fashion business, merchandising, came to New York, recruited by Macy's to work in product development. Like before I started my senior year, I had a job already, and I knew I was moving to New York. So I was just like coasting through senior year of college. Moved to New York, started doing that, hated it, and then quit and just kind of bopped around, doing different things. I was a stylist assistant for a while. I was a product rep for Armani sunglasses for a while, and that was good. I worked in retail for a bit, because I'd always worked in retail previous to that. So I worked in retail and did visual merchandising and all these different things. And I just wasn't feeling it. I wasn't feeling retail anymore. I've been doing retail since I was like 16, 17 years old. And I was like, I'm over retail. What's next? And I wasn't sure styling was all the way it either, because, a lot of the jobs I was getting were like commercials or like celebrity when I was assisting. And it just seemed like it just wasn't enough for me, creatively. So I remember walking around New York City and being like, wait, those trucks say wardrobe on them. How do you get on one of those trucks? Like, how do you do this? And I've always loved film, always loved film. Because again, remember, I grew up really strict. I was like, not really allowed to do much as a kid. So movies were a way to like escape and, imagine different worlds and stuff like that. So I've always loved film and I've always loved fashion. And it just clicked one day. I was like, if I could figure out how to get on one of those wardrobe trucks, how to get a job, I can marry two things I love. Because to me, it's about marrying things that you love. Like that's where you're going to have something that sustains you and keeps you inspired, doing things that you love, marrying multiple things that you love and turning them into a career. And so I just kept asking people. Like, I used to work backstage fashion week every season. And I remember this one season, I was just like relentless. People were like asking me about me and what I want to do. And I was like, oh, I really want to, costume design. I want to costume design. I want to do this. And just anybody that would talk to me, I would just tell them what I wanted to do. And literally after doing that for, I think, a couple of days, someone walked up to me out of the blue and was like, hey, I'm going to be costume designing a film and we need interns. And at the time, I had like quit one of my jobs and got fired from my waitressing job because who knows why. And so I was on unemployment. And so interning wasn't like crazy to me. It was like the perfect timing. So because it was unpaid interning and I had all this experience, like doing styling and various other things. I just needed a way in, because I knew like once I had a way in, I could do it. I work hard, I learn fast, I'm smart. I have like really amazing ideas. Like I knew I could do it. I just need to learn the process and I just need to work with people to learn the process. And so I interned on that movie. It was a movie called Solitary Man with Michael Douglas, Danny DeVito, and Susan Sarandon. And I interned on that for like 2 weeks. And one of the costume PAs that I was working with, she was like, you know what you're doing. Like, I'm going to refer you for a paid job. You shouldn't be interning. And I was like, thank you so much. And so she referred me for a paid job. So I started at the bottom as an unpaid intern and literally worked my way up. And, my second job I worked with David Robinson, who's the costume designer for Zoolander and Donnie Brasco. You guys know those movies. And he really helped me to see what a costume designer does, because I drove him around every day. We would like go shopping, we would go fabric sourcing. I would take him to set, pick him up from set, pick him up from his house in the morning. We would talk every day. And so I got to really get a vibe for like what a costume designer does. I helped him with fittings, you know, when his assistant wasn't there. And he was just like an awesome person, really quirky, awesome person. And we had a great time together. And I was like, I think I really want to do this, you know, because it's all about exposure. It's all about being exposed to someone who does that thing that you want to do. Because sometimes we don't know, we know what we like, but we don't know what the job is or what the industry is until you get exposed to it.
Gotcha. That's really amazing. I think the key thing is that you literally started from the bottom. Like you went around and you almost demanded to get on the set, and you got on one, and you figured it out from there.
Relentless. And to answer the other part of your question, the hardest part about being a Black woman in this space is the access, is the barriers to entry. Because the girl who referred me for my first paid job, her aunt was in the industry and her aunt got her in. You know, when I first started working in New York, I was like one of the only Black women working in the departments. Now there's whole departments that are Black people. And I moved away from New York in 2013, moved back beginning of 2020. And I'm here working now. And I'm like, wow, I can hire young Black people who are in the union now. Like, this is crazy. It was not like this before. So it is cool to see some incremental change. Like, we have a long way to go, but yeah, there was a lot of barriers to entry because people would just be like, well, I don't know where to find Black people or anybody of color. And so that was their reasoning for just not hiring us for so long. And now it's like, you can't use that as an excuse. But being a Black woman was that, didn't go to Yale or NYU, and I didn't have a network, that it was a huge barrier to entry. But once I got in, I worked my ass off and people couldn't deny me,
That's what it is. And now you're on top. I mean, you're literally on top of the business, a part of a film that won an Oscar. You're a part of the Academy right now. One of the things—
Two Oscars.
Two, excuse me. Let's not.
It won Best Song and Best Supporting.
Let's go. One of the things I admire about you is your perseverance. A lot of people have dreams. A lot of people want to follow their passions, but when things get difficult, they kind of tuck and run back to what is safe. And talk to me a little bit about times where you might have had that feeling and how you persevered through it.
I mean, which time? Like, had that feeling last year. Like, I think it comes up once a year. I will talk about the time where I was homeless in LA because I feel like that is the best and worst example because it was a really, really hard time. But I will say it's the best example because even though I was homeless and I was going through all the things I was going through, I didn't give up. I didn't quit my dreams. I went through a emotionally and financially abusive relationship in LA. The person I moved out there with, once we got there, things changed. It was one of those situations where someone isolates you from your community, and that happens. So, anyone who's watching, listening, if you're dating someone and they want to isolate you from your community, they are not it. Like, that is not what someone who loves you needs to be doing. So, or should be doing. So once I got isolated from my community, things went downhill. I was in denial about it for a while, but ultimately I walked away from that relationship with no money. And when I came to LA, I had like a decent amount of money saved for that move. But I walked away with like a negative bank account and my car was in the shop and I didn't have enough money to get my car out the shop. And no place to live and all these things. I was like couch surfing, staying with friends, but I never lost sight of my goals. And my goal and my reason for moving to LA wasn't just to be with this person. I had always had this goal to move to LA to further my career and be a bi-coastal costume designer. And I was going on job interviews with getting myself, putting my face on, putting my clothes on, going on these job interviews with these like major directors and producers. And I was homeless. Nobody knew what I was going through. And, at that time, to not get a job was particularly devastating, because the thing is, like, when this industry, you go on a lot of meetings and a lot of job interviews and you might not get the job. Like, you go on more meetings where you don't get the jobs than you get the job, right? But during that time, it would be like particularly devastating, because it's like, I need this money so I can get an apartment. I was living in the Korean spa at times, like if I couldn't find a place to stay, I would pay the $20 overnight fee or whatever and sleep in the Korean spa. But I never lost sight of my goals. I kept pushing forward. I did, whatever odd jobs and things. I mean, I started from the bottom there too. I ended up doing a job for like next to no money, like starting over. And at that point, when I got to LA, I had 2 films that had gone to Sundance and done fairly well. I had an agent, but I started over out there. I was like, well, this is what I have to do to get a network out here. That's what I got to do. And I did like an AFI movie, basically for damn near free. And through that, I got an agent, because one of the people working on the project was like, you're really talented. You don't have representation. Like, she was like, this obvious that you were doing this for networking purposes, kind of a thing. She recognized it, and she connected me with who ended up being my first agents. And I was with them up until Judas came out. So I was with them for the majority of my career, and they really helped me to get more jobs and get more connected. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how I kept going. I mean, besides having like, a good spiritual practice, I would definitely recommend, if you are going to do anything in entertainment and the arts, you need to have a good spiritual practice, because there's a lot of things that can sway you. Your ego can start lying to you. You know what I mean? So like, you can get really, really pushed off track very, very, very easily. So I would say definitely my spiritual practice sustained me, and my community over here, and some community in LA, kept me going and gave me places to land and places to stay and helped me out. So
I respect your ability to start over. A lot of people are afraid to start over, even when it's clear that that's really the only path forward. They'd rather stay in a safe place. But it's clear that you understood what you needed to do to get to where you are. So let's talk a little bit about costume design. What is the process of costume design, and how much research goes into that process?
Man, costume design, I think the process, there's things about the process that stay the same. And then there's things about the process that differ based on like what you're actually doing. So like the process of designing something contemporary is a little different than designing a period piece or something that's sci-fi fantasy. There's commonalities between all of them, but the processes slightly change, right? So, I mean, the main thing is you get this script, you get these words on a page, and you literally have to read the page and use your imagination, right? Somebody I've collaborated with a bunch of times, he said that his job as a director is to pick the best things from everyone's movies that they have in their head, right? So like, I have a movie going on in my head when I'm reading a script as a costume designer. So does the production designer. So does the DP, and I thought it was a really cool way of putting it, because it's like, it's true. All you have are the words on the page in your imagination. So, you start there, and then based off of how you get inspired by what's on the page, you start compiling things. You start doing research, you start sketching. Like there's this whole like gathering process, like almost like you're a scientist, I kind of akin it to science in a lot of ways, where you're doing all this research and you're compiling all this material, whether it be digital or physical fabrics, like you just really are just like compiling. And my process, I think, is chaotic, but I'm learning it's kind of common. I like to compile the stuff, and then it's kind of like, okay, like Let's throw it against the wall and see what sticks. Pick out what's the best of what all these elements are. Decide what this character's motivation is. And that also happens in conjunction with the screenwriter and or the writer director. Like, what does this character do for a living? Where do they hang out at? Who are their friends? And all these things inform like how you would dress them. You then, after you do all this compiling and research and sketching, then sit down with the director or showrunner, depending if it's TV, and you go through everything with them. And you're like, here's what I'm thinking. This is what I see this character, who I see this character as, and what I see them wearing. And then they give you feedback. You know, if you are in a situation where your director or showrunner trusts you, you're good. Like, they might have minor notes. If you're in a situation that's not like that, it's a lot harder. And so you'll be constantly like trying to figure out what the director or showrunner wants, because ultimately it's their vision, right? So it's ultimately their vision, but you as a collaborator definitely have a say. You as a costume designer are the authority of your realm, but you still have to like compromise a lot of times, right? With a showrunner or director, if they don't always understand your point of view. If they understand your point of view, if they trust you, it's the shit. Like, you can fly. That's what happened with Judas. That's what happened with See yesterday. Like, I could just fly and do my thing. And it pays off, because those are two, like, out of all the projects that I've done, those are the two where people are like, the clothes, oh my God, it's amazing, right? And it's because my collaborators trusted me and I could just fly, right? So I think it's also important to, now I'm very, very, very aware of who I choose to collaborate with because of that. Because if like I'm getting a vibe in an initial meeting where I'm like, I don't know if this person is going to trust me, because you can kind of feel it out. Now that I'm at the point where I can kind of feel it out, I might not do the project because I want to be able to fly. I want the people that I work with to be able to trust me. So after getting through all these meetings, and you know, it's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of meetings, it's a lot of budgeting. Then you get to do the fun stuff. You get to build the clothes, you get to, you know, work with your team, swatching fabrics, picking out fabrics, building clothes, pulling clothes, shopping, working with other vendors, you know, outside of your costume shop. They usually have tailors in the shop, as well as buyers, you know, to buy fabrics, buyers to buy clothing. I'll also have, you know, admin help. So with all the paperwork and the budgeting, like I run an entire department. It's like running a design house, you know, like I akin it to running a fashion house or design house, like a temporary one, you know? And then, you know, the actors come in and then you get to see all these ideas that you had on them. And then some more reworking happens, because it's like, you could have an idea on the page. Once you get on this person, maybe that's not the direction this character actually needs. Maybe you have to adjust it a bit, you know? And there's also been times where it's just like, no, this isn't going to work on this person at all. We got to go back to the drawing board. So, you know, you really work out the characters and the fittings. And that's kind of my favorite part. I'm like always itching to get to the fittings, because I'm like, that's where the magic happens. That's where we figure out what we're doing, who this character is. And like, and it's fun because like when I did fittings with like Lakeith and Ashton for Judas, they were in the fittings getting into character. They started walking different. You know what I mean? They was like, you know, popping their collar, looking in the mirror, like they change. Like you get to see the actor transform. And I think I'm like on the first line of being able to do that. I get to see that before the director does, you know? And so like, you know, my role is very, very important because it really helps the actors get into character. And then we start shooting, and then you got to keep everything organized because it's all shooting out of order. You know, we're shooting everything out of order. I've never shot anything in order from page 1 to page 158. Never, not once. Everything's out of order. You go back to things multiple times, so you need multiples of things. Somebody might get shot and you need five pieces of clothing because they're gonna line it with these things called squib that makes the shirt explode. Like, it's really, really, really intense. Shooting is really, really intense. And especially if it's like something like Judas where people are getting shot. So yeah, so then we start shooting and we are full speed ahead until we're done. And then everything gets packed up, labeled and stored, and I go on to the next project.
Nice. Speaking of Judas and the Black Messiah, I know that people have been trying to make that biopic for a while, and it took a lot to get the okay from his people for it to happen. So the research for that film, what were your major takeaways and how did you incorporate that information into the costume design, given how much his people wanted it to be something that was genuine and authentic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a research nerd. I also know, especially in the information age of Web 2, Web 3, internet, you can look up everything, right? So I felt like I'm doing a disservice to myself and the people watching the film if I didn't portray these people accurately. And some of the people in the film are still alive. I actually just had a nice text exchange with Congressman Bobby Rush. He's alive, and I got to portray him in the film. And he and I texted a couple weeks ago, and he was like, I told him, I was like, you're a fashion icon. Like every time I saw images of him, he was just so clean, like so mod, so clean. He had his jacket, he had his Beetle boots, like just clean. And and it was so cool. I got to tell him that. But had I not did him justice, we wouldn't have that conversation. You know what I'm saying? So I just felt like a really, 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 really strong urge to get it right, to do justice to my people. You know what I'm saying? Because I find like I have found and have seen and witnessed as a consumer of film times where someone costume designed something and I could tell they weren't of the community or took as much care as they could have in portraying our people. And so I just really, really, really wanted the world to see what I saw in these research photos, what I saw in my family's photos in the 60s, what I saw, around me every day. I just, everything that I do particularly when I'm doing projects about Black people, Black, brown people, people of color, I'm really trying to represent us right, in the best ways that I can. I also, like, as a side note, I've gotten a lot of scripts that I've said no to because the content to me just didn't feel right. It felt too stereotypical. It was like, I don't want to lend my artistry to that, So I nerded out and I had so much fun researching it. And I think that's what shows too. It's like, I had so much fun researching it. We had so much fun dressing everybody. The fittings were fun. So even though like the subject matter was sad, there was so much joy in making these costumes and making the film and how our community on that film got together and banded together and made this project happen. So yeah, like research is paramount. Like if you don't do research, you can't really be a costume designer. Even if you're doing something contemporary, you still have to do research. You have to understand what the trends are in the city that you're shooting this project in, like what's happening there. Because what's happening in New York is different than what's happening in Atlanta, is different than what's happening in LA. Like it requires immense research. And I'm just really grateful, one, that the 60s is when people were going crazy with photographs, right? So there was so much material, and that's why it was so much fun, because it was like, wow, there's so much out there. In color, like color photographs were starting to get more popular then too. So once I got my hands on color photographs, it was like mind-blowing, the colors. There was so many beautiful colors during that time. But when you're looking at black and white, you don't really understand what colors existed during that time. Catalogs helped, Montgomery Ward, Sears and JCPenney catalogs, because those would help put into perspective the color palettes for each season and each year. So that's what I used a lot too as well for picking out color palettes, was relying on the catalogs, because like basically, a lot of people were ordering things and buying them out of catalogs. So that's how what existed during those times too. So yeah, it was a combination of photographs, catalogs, watched a lot of documentaries, a lot of documentaries. There was this French documentary team following Chairman Fred around while they were forming the Illinois chapter. So there was some great footage. That's where the camel hat came from. It was some footage of him talking about education and the importance of education. It's a beautiful clip. If you can look it up, it's I would Google like Chairman Fred talks about education, because he just talks about the importance of education and like, yeah, you can give people money, but if they don't have education, they're just gonna rob each other, you know, because they don't understand the importance of the money and how to manage it. So yeah, I mean, it was like it was a lot of research from so many different places. People were just like giving me amazing sources. Like I was just really blessed, you know, during that time doing my own research. You know, I definitely also like contacted like family members and friends, you know, for pictures of their families during that time, because all of it is connected, you know.
Nice. So now let's talk Hollywood. Like I said before, you're kind of at the top of the mountain. You know, a job comes your way. It's not the thing you can just I'll pass on that. But what changes do you want to see? No, pardon me. What are the most glaring issues you face as a young Black professional in your line of work, and how have you navigated those issues?
Well, I mean, I think it's definitely the barrier to entry was definitely a huge part of it. And even now it's like you kind of have like one foot in the door, but they won't let you get your foot all the way in. It's like my foot's like halfway in, you know, and it's this weird feeling because and it's hard to like really place and like put your finger on it because it's so subversive, you know what I mean? And it's passive aggressive. And it's like, we're gonna let you do this, but just this and not all of that, you know? So like, even for example, you know, I got nominated for a CDG award, and then the Oscar nominations come out and I didn't get nominated, but they're like, hey, you could be an Academy member and make us look cool, you know? And I'm like, okay, you know, and you know, I honestly think if Vogue magazine hadn't said what they said, they might not have made me an Academy member, because Vogue magazine like clearly stated I was snubbed. They were like, this is an obvious snub. And I'm so grateful to that journalist for doing that, because, you know, I was getting emails and calls from people I didn't even know that were my colleagues that were like, I'm so upset that this, you know, Academy didn't do the right thing and blah, 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 blah. So at that point, I met the criteria for being nominated. I had 10 films under my belt. And they require you to have, I think, like 3 before you can get nominated. So, you know, it is what it is. I didn't expect to get as far as I did. I didn't expect to be on any of these lists or anything. So I was grateful for everything, because I'm like, all of it is just raising my profile. And I was like relatively unknown. Like people thought that was my first movie. It was my 10th. And I had to keep reminding people like, no, I've been here. No one cared, because I was like a young Black woman with no connection. So no one cared. So yeah, I think like when your talent is so undeniable, they have to look at you. And then like they don't have a choice. And that's kind of what it is. It's like the whole idea behind Black excellence, which is exhausting, because, you know, there's mediocre colleagues of mine that are my friends who are white people, and they don't have to prove and excel and push as much as I do. And I think that is like the hardest part, is like I'm constantly like having to like one up myself. It's like if I have a mediocre anything, I'm done. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, oh well, like on to the next exceptional Black girl, because it's like it can only be one. And it felt like that for years. It's like it could only be Ruth Carter. It's getting better, you know what I mean? Like, and Ruth Carter's amazing. I'm not taking anything from her, but why was it like she was the only Black female costume designer, but only Black costume designer, period, that was getting a look for years? And there's other colleagues of her that are in her age range that have been working for years as well. So, you know, I think that is a big problem and it's getting a little better. But you know, for a while it was just like, oh, there's only the one, and it wasn't true at all. It's not true at all. You know, there's Sharon Davis, who's been working for a long time, Paul Tazwell. There's I don't know, Francine Tanchuk. You know what I mean? All these people are in Ruth's generation, but you've never heard their names because this industry was like, nope, we can only have one, you know? And so I'm grateful that that's starting to change. And I saw, you know, a couple other Black costume designers got nominated for Oscars and CDG awards. Paul Tazwell got nominated for West Side Story. Derica Cole Washington got nominated for a CDG award along with Ruth Carter. So it's starting to change, but you know, honestly, up until like George Floyd, it was like, no, there can only be one, which is kind of crazy.
Wow. I can't say that I'm surprised though. One interesting thing, I knew that a lot of people would think that Judas was your first film, and that's kind of like the iceberg effect, right? They only see the tip and not necessarily the 10 years of work that went into that work. So what you do is, you know, behind the scenes work, and I know that in Hollywood there's a discussion right now about pay equity and doing the right thing when it comes to the people who spend countless hours on these sets for the movies and the television shows that we love. Can you talk a little bit about that, and you know, what changes you want to see regarding how Hollywood values behind the scenes work?
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood values certain behind the scenes work more than others. You know, and it also comes down to the bargaining power that the various unions and guilds have. So it's a very complex issue. So like me as a costume designer, we are not valued as much. Just straight up, we're not. If we were valued as much, we would be getting paid more on par with our production designer colleagues. They're in a different union. They have different bargaining power than we do. And it also should be noted that part of the reason why that is happening is because our guild is primarily women. So like let's start there. It's primarily women. So like from jump, like the collective bargaining power is just not there because of that. I mean, I know the guild and United Scenic Artists, like they're fighting as hard as they can fight for sure. It's not them, it's just the perception of us and what we do. Like I said, we are like the first ones to work with these actors in developing their characters. Like we're very important, but we don't get paid accordingly or treated accordingly. So like I get paid one rate, no, you know, and like that's it. I don't get overtime. Like I get paid what I get paid. That's it. And you know, on the grand scheme of things, I make good money. Absolutely. But when it comes down to how much of my life I give up to these projects, it's not enough, right? It's a lot of hours, 60 to 80 hours a week on average, right? To make these pieces that you guys love, we're working 60 to 80 hours a week. And so, you know, with the call for the strike, you know, all of these things were coming to a head. And, you know, the strike ultimately didn't happen for various reasons. And I don't really want to get into that. But my hope is that, you know, the next round of bargaining, people will get more involved. Because like I wasn't involved. I wasn't aware of a lot of this because, again, like, you know, my whole career, I was kind of just like working and doing my thing. And I wasn't involved in the guilds and the unions and stuff. And now I am a little bit more involved than I was and more aware. But it takes people becoming involved and speaking up and going to meetings and being like, this is what we need. But, you know, unless like the producers take us seriously and understand our value, it's really, really hard for us to command like what our colleagues command. I mean, just like just for an example, on my last project, the DP got paid almost double what I got paid. you know? So, you know, just so you guys can understand like the discrepancy in pay, like the pay, there's like no, it's all over the place, but that's based off of what they can command and the weight that they have and the respect that they have, you know what I mean, as cinematographers. And I'm just like, things need to be a little bit more leveled out. Like we are all contributing to this look of the film, you know, like creating this world, like we're all contributing to it. The pay shouldn't be so, you know, up, like it shouldn't be so uneven. That's, you know, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I don't really have the answer. I honestly am like, I'm not really, I'm not really sure how much is actually going to change with the next bargaining, because I know like how hardcore the producers are when it comes to negotiating. They don't play. So I don't know what's going to happen. I know what I would like to see happen, just a little bit more of a leveling out. It shouldn't be up here, you know, maybe like here, you know. I don't have to get paid the same as a DP, but like, come on, like that's crazy.
Tell them to show you the bag, you know.
Yeah.
So luckily for you, I know that you're involved in more than just television and film. So you have other avenues where, you know, you can go and get that bag. So outside of film and television and costume design, what other endeavors are you currently involved in?
Well, I told you about Black Designer Database, which I started. We're looking to expand into like Web3, so actively looking for funding for that. I've been doing a lot of speaking engagements, which is really cool, and has turned into like another income stream for me that I wasn't expecting at all. And I'm so grateful for it. And I really credit the fact that I did all this press and these interviews and on-camera interviews, you know, because that's, people were like, oh, she's interesting to talk to, great, you know? So that's been really, really awesome. I have a lifestyle brand called Charlese and Gold. It's a jewelry line, and I'm working on expanding that. You know, and I also do like private clients still. I've been just doing some designing and styling for private clients, so I'll get hit up probably like one per quarter right now. But looking to like, I'm just looking to expand everything I'm doing, honestly. And it's been really great. Like because of the success of Judas, there's so many people that want to work with me now. So I'm able to like employ more people and teach them what I know, and just like continue to expand on all the things that I've been doing by myself all this time. And now I'm like, oh, I could have help. And like now I have all these streams of potential income or income that I can grow because I have support and help. And, you know, it goes back to the whole thing about community and how important community is. So yeah, I'm also developing a TV show, which I'm excited about. And I'm not going to talk too much about it yet, but when it's done, y'all know I'm excited about that. And I think that's it. Yeah.